with our next speaker, and our next speaker doesn't need much of an introduction. Imagine, who had the brownie? Went pretty well with the coffee, right? Well, finance and insurance go really well together. So up next to talk about protection products and insurance is James Searle from AutoSure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Richard. Choice time slot, mate. What am I dealing with here? End of a big day. I'm talking about insurance, and I'm probably one of the last presenters standing between you lot and that open bar. So, I'll call it, shall I, Toddy? I guess it's a similar scenario that plays out in dealerships from time to time around the country. You've been working with this customer, they've finally settled on a car, they've picked it to pieces, but they love it. You've done a deal on their trade, you've got the finance underway, and now you're thinking, should we be talking about insurance? Have I got enough time? Do they look like they're going to be interested in insurance? Maybe not. Well, I'm here to tell you a couple of reasons why I think it's still very important to have in your sales process. Right. So, very much so. The products are really evolved. They're not the products that were sold 30 years ago. Every insurance company in the industry has continued to develop and improve and enhance their products. And they're really focused on providing useful and relevant protection for customers. Here's an example of a current claim we have running in this post-COVID world. This is a gentleman that was injured at work 2 years ago. He battled on, but eventually in April 21 had to leave work, and the PPI claim started. And about a week later, he was approved for hip replacement. As of today, he's still waiting, and there's no surgery set date for this gentleman. And this is not a one-off claim either, and I think all insurance companies in the market are experiencing this. There is a lot of PPI claims where the length of claim is increasing because of the medical procedure backlog. And this just proves, still today, as 30 years ago, PPI is a very valid product for your customers. Our increasing complexity, I don't know about you, but I find cars are getting very bossy these days. I'm either wandering on the lane, I need a service, I need to slow down, but there is a lot of complexity in cars, and it's just not the reserve of the high-end luxury or the sports cars. It's in everyday vehicles where that complexity is, and all the gadgets, and that's just increasing claims complexity, which basically increases claims cost. Here's an example of a wiring loom for a Bentley SUV. I mean, this is the top end, but you get my point. There is a lot going on in cars these days. This here is closer to home. This is the 10-speed transmission from a Ford Ranger. I don't know about you, but the guys and girls working on these transmissions are really skillful technicians. There is so much going on in this gearbox and transmission. It's amazing. But these cars are standard everyday cars that are being purchased by consumers these days. Emerging new technology, and I think this is really important, and you see that the products that are offered through the insurance companies are continually evolving and developing for new technology. 2018 Mitsubishi Outlander. Great car, fantastic family wagon. Here's another one, 2018, exactly the same. The top one is a 2.4 petrol, and the bottom one is the PHEV version of that. Comes to claim time around the air conditioning unit. The petrol, to replace the compressor, just under $2,000. For the electric hybrid, at least $4,000. Now, I'm not trying to point out that one is better than the other here. I'm just showing that as the technology is changing, the risks are changing, and the insurance is still very valid and moving with the times. It's still very important to be selling mechanical breakdown on these electric hybrids and plug-in hybrids. So the other point I'd like to make is around service, and you are providing in a dealership a convenient and useful service to your customers when they come in and talk about cars. The thing to remember when they're coming in for a car, purchasing a car, they're not just purchasing the car, they're not thinking just about how many seats it has, full drive, or it's got a sunroof. They're also thinking about how they're going to pay for that car and also how they're going to protect that car. It very much isn't a one-dimensional transaction. It's one of their largest purchases they'll make, outside a house for most people. And it's really relevant at a dealership level that you actually talk to them about car insurance and protecting that asset. It's hand in glove. They can't purchase a car without comprehensive motor insurance. They shouldn't purchase a car without considering mechanical breakdown insurance. With that, you've got the convenience of being able to bundle products. I've got a couple of examples here because it's not unique to the motoring industry. It happens in all industries. Take, for example, McDonald's. That meal pack, the cost of that meal pack is cheaper than buying those individual items separately. And in the case of the Spark Mobile, that plan can be mixed and matched to suit the customer's requirements. They can take unlimited data and they can add Spotify, or they can do this or that. The great thing about you offering insurance in your dealership, that it has a positive synergy. The car purchase and protecting the car go together, they fit together. Very similar to the Trustpower example. Power, gas and broadband, it all makes sense. Same thing in the dealership. And the other thing too to mention, as Amos pointed out before, income from insurance is a valid part of the dealership overall revenue. It's important that you offer insurance products in a clear way. It's clearly that the customer can understand it without losing the interest, and bundling of products is a way that you can do that. It keeps it in one neat package and helps them to stay engaged. And the same as that McDonald's meal, you may not have the same income from each item, but the overall transaction works for the customer and for you. And the other thing to remember is, if you're adding insurance to a car sale, the operational cost of adding insurance is only incremental rather than having to sell that separately or at a later date. And it's been proven with these bundled products that increased customer retention comes from the back end of that. If somebody buys a car and you arrange finance on it and you arrange the insurance, then you as the dealer are their port of call. First person they go back to, anything relating to that car. Not too long to go for a beer. So I will say, and just in the final stages, there is a duty of care when offering insurance that dealers have to be aware of. These are the expectations of the regulator when dealer is offering insurance products to customers. And you can see the key person here is the customer. So if you offer insurance products at a dealership, it is your duty to ensure every customer is offered the insurance protection every time. So they can decide for themselves whether they need insurance protection or what insurance protection they need. Insurance should be not seen as an add-on if you have enough time, if you remember, or even if you can be bothered. Every customer, every time. And you'll notice that I say offer, not sell insurance. Your role as the dealer is to offer the insurance protection and allow the customer to decide for themselves what suits them and their personal circumstances and needs. You must present the products with the disclosures, with the features, pricing, and allow the customer to choose. So, just in closing, I'd say if you treat insurance as a core part of your business operation and you put the customer in the centre of their transaction, allow them to make decisions, keep them fully informed, let them make good, informed decisions, then absolutely the insurance protection should be at the heart of your insurance sale. Let's go and have a beer. No.
Not quite there yet.
Thanks, Phil.
We'll hang right up here for a second. We'll bring up Amos Bambury and start a few questions first. And I'll open one from you. We've seen some negative words towards insurance products from some consumer organisations lately. Does that continue at all? I mean, have they got a leg, or I mean, what's your take on that situation?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Richard. I think definitely the financial mentors have got a bit of traction at the moment, and they seem to have the ear of the government. I think it's just a good time for us to make sure we all have our house in order. I believe we have great guidelines under the CCCFA. The market has moved hugely over the last 10 years, and how we transact insurance and finance in the dealer world is appropriate and fit for purpose.
Fantastic. Great. Any questions from the crowd? One down here from Hayden, and then one up the back. So you've got a bit of movement to do, Deborah.
You've touched on it. I think having this probably just focuses on MBI in particular. It's protection for the customer, it's protection for the dealership, and again, Richard just touched on it. There's so much information out there about consumer protection, consumer law. As dealerships, we promote the quality of our product, the quality of our service. The customer's often just been with a salesperson who's probably spent an hour saying this is a great car and we're a great dealership. Then they sit down in front of an F&I person, and they've then got to sell them MBI to protect them when something goes wrong, or if something goes wrong. What's, I guess, from the AutoSure playbook or from your experience, what's the best sort of soft intro of the product, and to justify it without, I guess, using fear as a motivator?
Yeah, yeah, good point. I think the big thing that I would say around mechanical breakdown insurance in particular is, regardless of how good it is, whether it's a car or a cake mixer, as it ages, the potential for something to go wrong increases, and that's just, a fact of mechanical engineering and electrical componentry. So it's not that it's bad, it's just that, age and wear does play a part in that.
Okay, and so on from that, remove the engine from the equation. So as we're selling more electric vehicles and you've got minimal moving components, how do we then sort of, put the sell on them for those?
That's a really, really good point, Hayden, and that's why I showed you that Mitsubishi Outlander example. When we were first building a policy for electric vehicles, and probably the same for all insurance companies, our big focus with the traction battery, we thought this was going to be just a terrible risk, and we really spent a lot of time working on that. 5 years down the track, actually traction battery is not the problem. It's the inverter, it's the air conditioning, it's the charging unit, and that sort of thing. So it's other risks are developing that we never thought of, and probably will continue to evolve. But yeah, absolutely, generally the electric motor and the battery isn't the problem we thought it was going to be.
Well, Deborah moves that microphone halfway around the world. Question on that, it's asking that, how do you handle warranties in regards to the speed of degradation on traction batteries? I mean, it's such a hard thing to work with, really, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, and some batteries are better than others, and some batteries are just amazingly good. We've had one recently, I think it's 13 years old, and it's just starting to show signs of degradation. The primary thing that I'd say is we don't decide whether it's degradation or it's a sudden unforeseen fault. The technician does, but generally they're looking for all the individual cells, and if they're all going down together, that's more degradation. If there's one or two that have dropped out, that's sudden and unforeseen. In general terms.
Now, down the back.
All right, thanks, James. Richard touched on the spotlight that's pretty much being shone on the insurance of automotive sales as, I guess the swear word is add-ons. And with the spotlight being more apparent over time, do you think that New Zealand will go in the same way as Australia, where an insurance product can't be sold on that vehicle within 4 days of the sale of the vehicle?
Yeah, going to the deferred sales model. First of all, I would say is that the New Zealand industry and environment is completely different from Australia. You know, we are definitely a step above that. The second point is going back to what I said previously. This is a good time to make sure we have our house in order. But in all reality, for that to be pushed through legislation and that sort of thing, I think that's a long way to go yet.
Interesting looking at what you were saying before in regards to watching your process through there with the thing. Has the Triple CFA almost changed the nature of how people who work with finance work, and potentially even the nature of who you might hire in those roles? I mean, it almost feels like it's a little. I hesitate you would use the word social worker, but you've got to look a little more at the person, I think, than you used to potentially.
Yeah, totally. I think it's changed the process, but also it has become more and more acceptable, like the bank link and garnishing that info. But it's actually also made it easier because we have that info in front of us. You can actually make a real good decision early on, rather than obviously pushing it forward and back in between yourself and a lender or a bank. So I think for that aspect, it's actually helped a lot. Because you just see more information a lot quicker and it's a lot more accessible. Otherwise, getting someone's 90 days bank statements is like hard work, but now it's very industry standard. Yeah.
Is it potentially a different skill set, a different person? I mean...
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think, and naturally, and that probably is all-encompassing, even like what James touched on as well, is like those insurance offerings. It's a lot different and it's a different process rather than maybe when 10 years ago it was a lot different and we put a lot more effort into when someone said no, you actually turned it into a yes, like, you know, it was different. and you can't do that anymore. And so, yeah, it's changed a lot. Yeah.
Any more questions before we carry on from here? No? Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amos Banbury from Better and James Searle from AutoSure.